Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. My name is Ryan Bean. I am your host in self-observation. This podcast is an exploration of physical and non-physical self through discussion around yoga, meditation, self-improvement, self-realization, and practices that elevate the mind-body-soul connection. Let's start observing. On this episode of Life as an Observer, I talked to DJ Taz Rashid about creative wisdom that's in the body, self-realization, what his songwriting processes are, some of the challenges that have been in making music and producing music in the last year while locked down. And we also talk about what the good life is and what that consists of. What are some of the things that you need to fill your cup to have a good life and to be able to move forward at the end of your life, knowing that you fulfilled that purpose. Really great stuff, talking to DJ Taz about his music and kind of what it means and kind of the deeper side of creation of music. Not just the beats and the melodies, but really what does it mean to be a mindful music producer? Take a listen. This is an amazing episode with DJ Taz Rashid. Hey Taz, good to have you here.
Ryan, what's up, brother? It's awesome being on your show. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for being on Life as an Observer. Last time we saw each other, it was music and lights flashing around us, and now we're in a little bit more mellow of an environment here. But I want to kind of introduce my audience to who you are and why I wanted to have a conversation with you. I think all of our conversations have been around events and music. And I wanted to just kind of get to go a little deeper with you and learn a little bit more about who you are beyond the music, because your music certainly speaks for itself. But
Thank you.
yeah, I've been a fan for many years, and kind of just watching the evolution of it and the collaborations of your music and just the things that you've done. And frankly, I just think it's just a really creative mind. When I listen to your music, I'm like, wow, super creative, getting really deep into expression and how we want to move. And so when I teach yoga, I don't really teach alignment based. I mean, yes, there's alignments to keep us safe, but I really talk a lot about how mobility and the way we move is kind of more important, especially as it relates to like the long run. And I'd rather be able to walk when I'm 90 than I really care about a triangle pose. It's not what I'm all that interested in. So I only know your newest albums and some of them going back, but what really gets me is when you name them. And so that's kind of what made me wanted to think. We have Seeker and Sage and Elements and Ananda, which for those who don't know, Ananda is bliss. And so you've taken these things that are important to us in a yogic sense, the Seeker and the Sage and the Elements and the bliss and kind of expressed them musically. And I guess what I'm most curious about is your creative wisdom that's in the body, and how do we kind of tap into that in a way that it equals bliss? How do we, through music or through movement, what is your idea of how we tap into that creative wisdom that's within ourselves?
That's deep. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I guess the best way to approach all this is first of all, thanks for having me on the show, and it's good to connect here. And I have a feeling we're going to go into some deeper subjects around this, which is, I do a lot of podcasts, and I don't always know what we're going to be talking about. Last one I was speaking about was like being sober and like getting out of my corporate life. And it's like, so this is great. I'm loving the direction we're going right now, going straight into the music. So the wisdom of the body, for me, the secret has been really understanding the breath and studying the breath from the beginning. I think a lot of my deeper spiritual work and the most biggest expressive enlightenment, I guess, if that's even a word. I guess I maybe just made it up.
You just made it up. It's the name of your next song.
I like that, expressive enlightenment. has been through breath work. Like a lot of it has been through breath work and understanding the breath. And so I think around 2013, maybe 14, I started working with Skylar Grant, who's one of the co-founders of Wanderlust, and we started like nerding out about the breath and the beat of music and how like music can really support with the right like BPM, beats per minute, kind of like the rhythm and flow in different sequencing of a yoga class. And that's like part of me. So when I'm writing music, like it's not even like I'm thinking about it, but it's there. I'm intuitively working with like could I flow to this music, with like in like a vinyasa class or any kind of yoga, movement when it comes to with this beat and be connected to my breath at the same time. And so whether that's a yoga song or a song for ecstatic dance or movement or for cardio or fitness type music, I'm like I'm constantly like intuitively thinking about that as I'm writing music. So how can the breath be connected to the beat? And so that's a big part of what I'm creating from like the foreground, Is that a word? I don't know, is
Yeah,
foreground a
yeah.
word?
Oh, yeah. What's out in what's out in front, and then you add the melody.
Yeah,
That's kind of like, and then the background has the bass, and
totally. Totally.
it has the ambiance. I guess is in
Yeah,
the background, and yeah. I
absolutely.
mean, on the last episode of Life as an Observer, I had a friend of mine, Jesse, who's a breath worker. And
Mm.
that's kind of what we share. Wim Hof method and
Oh yeah.
some other pranayam, and we were discussing how important breath is because
Yes.
it's exactly what as humans we've forgotten how to breathe. It's
Mm-hmm.
just in general, we breathe through the mouth, we don't sleep right, we take medications to help us sleep, and there's all kinds of things that can be corrected with our breath. And if I'm
Yes.
hearing you here, you're saying the creative process starts with your breath. That's where you
Yeah.
begin, like maybe just going inward a little bit, a small breath work meditation, and then it's sort of the creative. Um, I like to call it the inspired action happens after
Absolutely.
that. So the inspired
Yeah,
action.
and a lot of my creative expressions come through like during um practices of yoga or cardio or running. I like to run with my wife. We let run like once, sometimes twice a week, or whatever I'm practicing. Like when I'm in like experience of heavy like or more like either ecstatic breathing or different, like I get like a lot of downloads or creativity or ideas, and I try to like I usually won't stop the process to write it down, so I'll try to remember it, because becomes a block. Oh my god, an idea, I got to write this down. Like we want to do that, but that will take us out of the experience that we're having in that moment, so I try best to like try to remember it. But if it's a good enough idea, usually it'll stick around, or you try to remember it. Sometimes it's forgotten, but I do notice that a lot of creativity for me comes through when I do a lot of breath, activities that involve breath work. Um, so any kind of breathing exercises or whatever that is. So I highly encourage that in people to try out. If anyone's ever feeling a creative block or writer's block or anything like that, breathing works.
So I guess that's where I'm going next is, so when you have that block, I know I go through stages where I'm like, I just want to like create some music, and some days I just want to write, and some days I want to just, maybe paint something. And we go through these, like, for me, it's just a wave of like, okay, now that, now that, now that. And for
Mm-hmm.
you, your creative process, we've talked about it as breathwork, but what happens when you do hit a block
Yeah.
and you're saying, I've collaborated with this person already. I've done this thing. I've created this ambiance. What's the next step? So are you an artist in a way? Do you just play other people's music? Like, what inspires you outside
Yeah.
of breath?
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I love working with others. But I really, I've just the last few years, like as a solo artist, what inspires me is just really listening to a lot of music and other people's music. And a lot of times it's just random stuff. Like I'll go on different playlists and just listen for inspiration, because I mean, whether people want to admit this or not, we are all just a bunch of programs running around, since we were born, where we've been inspired by everything and anything around us, what we've heard, what we've seen, what we listen to, what we watch, who we are around, what energy we are giving ourselves to. So it's like So that process doesn't stop. Even as adults, we're continuously consuming energy, whether we realize it or not. What kind of energy that is up to us. So for me, like, I surround myself with different kinds of music, inspiration, whether, and this could be like all different genres, from rock to electronic, house, whatever it is, classic rock, old stuff. I'm always listening. And from that process, like, as especially as a musician, as a DJ, I'm like constantly downloading like either ideas or like snippets of inspiration, or like, oh, I like that, I want to do something like that, I want to learn how to do that, or like I could create something like that, and so it's more like active creation with inspiration. It's not even like, oh, I'm trying not to copy. It's like we're copying regardless like it or not. Like, we're constantly hearing other things, and our subconscious is like making prints of that in our creative outflow. So the more we do that actively, we can actually do that in a very with a strong intention of like taking something and just remixing it in our head in our own way. I could hear like some like deep house song and I'd be like, I love that. I could create something like that, but in my own flavor. You know what I mean?
Oh
And in my
yeah.
own taste. And creative people all know this, whether you're doing painting or you're creating music, we emulate life. So surround yourself with what you want to like listen to, or what you want to do. If you're any kind of creative person, or whether you're creating anything in general, you have to constantly surround yourself with new ideas and new ways of expressing yourself. And that's where the ideas really come from, is life and just everything that's already happening out there. And then what's invoked within is the special sauce that we all have, whether that's Shakti or our muse energy, however you want to call it. you know
I don't
that's
know if I
another.
could. I don't know if I could put you in a box or a category, Taz. Honestly, if I were, I mean, from the stuff that I sometimes offer in yoga to recently you did a Nirvana
Oh yeah.
remix of it, which was
Cover, yeah.
completely different than
The Elements
something.
album.
Yeah, so different. And then there was what the Wild thing that just came out,
Mm,
recently,
mm,
which is totally
yeah,
different too. So
yeah,
I'm seeing what you're telling me in application where you're like, you know what, I think I could do that a little different,
yeah,
but still be true to its original form, but then give it my own like
yeah.
personal spin, which is kind of awesome. And I know that a lot of uh I have friends who play around with mixing music, and I do a little bit of it myself,
Yeah.
and I can imagine that your list of tools and arsenal is pretty large to be able to create what you do. Can you tell me about what
Yeah,
you,
sure.
you know so I mean, do you start with a beat? You come out of breath work, you start with a beat, you maybe add some keys, do you sample? Tell me about how that looks when you're putting together, for instance, something that's we'll just say like a collaborative song. So you're getting this from someone else, you're getting this from one of the collaborators, and they've given you a beat, but then what do you do with that from there?
Yeah, there's not like one equation for any of this. And a lot of collaborations, they work in different ways. But sometimes we're in the same room, sometimes we're not. But depending on the type of project it is and what we're working on, it can go many ways. It can be that we start with chords, lay that down and then build a beat on top of that, or we're building a beat and then laying the chords on top of that. So there's different ways to go about it. What I personally love doing, I'll start by saying, so I've been playing instruments since like fifth grade. My main instrument is the keyboard and piano, and then I started playing guitar. So um, from very young, like, yeah, like fifth, sixth grade, I have to say that like I've been very lucky that my parents actually took me to piano classes, and I was able to take like theory classes. And I'm very lucky because that stuff stayed with me forever. And now I'm really like happy that I learned that at such a young age, because I can just figure out melodies, chords, things like that very easily, because like I have that. Even, I mean, I didn't go to school for music, but because I had that as a child, like I can just figure out a key or whatever in like 2 seconds. It's just like,
Mm.
for some people that takes like, it's really difficult, or they just can't do it because they just didn't have that opportunity as a child. It's like a language. So for me, I can kind of start wherever, whether it's a beat or lay down the bass, lay down like just a chord progression. But personally, I love to just be on the keyboard and playing chords and writing like a
Hmm.
progression and then laying a beat on top of that
You know, you've
and
had you've
kind of
had
going
some
from that.
you've had some success in
Yeah.
capturing an audience, you know, from me to others, that is very interested in hearing what happens next. It's like it does build. It has that progression, like you talked about. It just
Mm-hmm.
it's really beautiful, and it's like this almost like it's telling a story, you know. And so,
Sure.
like I said, you've had some success. Is there one particular EP or song that you're most proud of? I know you've had a couple of them that have kind of been staples, and you've done
Yeah.
remix albums on them and stuff. But is there one in particular that the audience would want to know that, hey, this is the one that Taz likes a lot?
Man, I it's hard to pinpoint because of they're so different. I personally really love like the kind of music I created like with Inspiration Drive. You may have heard
Yeah.
that one. Um that's it's a very like clean, modern, like simple like piano and beats, but it just like it gets to like the core soul of like what what I'm trying to do with the music is to like have like an awakening experience on the yoga mat. That's kind of like my
Mm,
theme and purpose of creating music is how can the yogi like go through an almost like a journey with during their practice, and like any teacher can use the music. And that's probably also why I create so many different styles of music, genres, things like that, is that like you could make a playlist of like a night, like you make like a 60-minute 75-minute playlist with a lot of my different music. And our audience, if they're not familiar with me, may think that it's like five different artists,
yeah.
in that whole thing. But I'm not doing that on purpose. That's just what comes through. Honestly, a lot of artists may look at that as like, oh, he doesn't have one sound. And I'm personally very okay with that because
Yeah.
I'm almost treating my production like as a DJ, which is like, how would I play this music? Like as a DJ, I would play like a lot of different styles of music, right? Like personally, I wouldn't just play like one thing in a
Yeah.
yoga class or how I would set it up. So I'm producing kind of like the way I would want to experience like a yoga class. And that's how I'm producing it. So like one song
Mm.
could be like a rock feel, one could be like an electro feel, one is like a modern down tempo chill feel. I don't know. So it's like um, yeah, yeah, if that helps.
Yeah. You know, I think I kind of know a lot of your business was being live and being in yoga classes. That was kind of your model. It was like, I'm going to produce music, but I really want to be at the
Yes,
festivals, and I want to be at
yes,
music classes, and I want to be out there, um,
yeah,
offering my music. And with the challenges that we've had in the last year, you've kind of changed your business model a little bit from the same as I from
everyone, right?
yeah, same as all of us. But I remember talking to you about how we're adapting to this digital model, and I saw you kind of as a leader in the forefront of like, let's change what we're doing. We have the tools, and and swap. Can you talk to me a little bit about the challenges that have been in going from a live music producing DJ to doing a lot of, I mean, you're producing a track almost every week, and just
Yeah.
kind of creating that. What have been the challenges around that from just from the previous place where you were performing all the time?
Yeah, okay, so interestingly, when COVID like struck deep and everyone just shut down live events, like I immediately saw the opportunity to go online and just build my own reality on there, like as far as like performing. So I didn't stop performing. I think I performed over like I don't even know, like 140 events last year during COVID, all on Zoom,
Hmm.
with different teachers and communities and festivals all over the world. So I was definitely busy DJing, but I was working harder than ever because, yes, I was DJing from my home, but I wasn't, so didn't have to fly around anywhere. But, obviously events like that as a musician, they didn't pay as well as like a festival or like an in-person event, but they still paid. So it added up and it supported myself and my family. So I'm grateful for that. But I had to work extra hard for that, and I was actually in love with it because I was making music regularly at home and then I was playing it all the time. So all the new music I was writing, I was like testing and playing it with communities all over the world right away. Like I could write a song and play it that night for a community in Luxembourg, or like an event that I'm doing in Detroit, all online, like whatever it was. So it was a really cool way for me to get a lot of practice in that way, like right away with different communities, all digitally online. Did I like it? Yeah, it was cool. I'm not in love with just sitting in my room and DJing and or whatever, wherever I am.
Yeah.
Usually I was in my room. I like the human connection. I personally love being at the event, connecting with yogis and mindfulness communities, festivals, and it's coming back. So yes, I had to do that. I made it work. It was successful, but now I feel like we're starting to go back out to outdoor events, and that's exciting because I have a lot of those starting to come up and build. So that was a challenge, but we got through it somehow. We're here. We are.
Yeah. Yeah. My business model changed, yours changed, and we somehow, I tell my students that the confrontation or the challenge, that's where the transformation is.
Absolutely.
And I think that what we all went through was a confrontation or a challenge, and we've coming out transformed in a way. I'm learning to use different equipment I never used before, and
Totally.
addressing technical issues that I wouldn't have known how to address, with the PC or with a Mac, or you're kind of learning those things. It's well, it's been fun nonetheless. But so you're back. You're getting back on the road. You're getting ready to start traveling.
Yes, and they're mostly outdoor events, which I like. I also do these events with the sound off headphones. It's like a silent disco, so those are great because you can do them outside. Um, I can be out in nature, doing yoga classes, 50, 60 people. I own 200 of them, so I could do larger events if I wanted to, but I don't think on the regular those that size events are happening as commonly yet. Maybe they will sooner, but most of the events are like 50, 60 people, maybe a little more, outdoors, in a field or somewhere in nature, things like that, or beach. And yeah, and I love them. And this summer's going to be busy with that. One of the things I was going to mention, Ryan, is that while last year, like you mentioned about how when there is a challenge, we rise, something new comes up. For me, one of the things was a lot of yoga teachers started reaching out to me because they were online and they needed copyright free music, or like music to use in their programs, not just on Zoom, but like content they were creating that they're monetizing.
Mm.
And licensing music, like legally, it can be very expensive. You have to get the master sync license for each individual song, blah blah blah. So I created a program that's extremely affordable, $100 a year, and you get access to like hundreds of songs for all your content. It's like ridiculous. So I created that. I hired somebody, I put this whole thing together, and now it's available. Like you go on my website and see it, and anybody around the world can sign up and get access to all this music for their programs, whether they're a studio or a teacher. But I don't think I would have done that like if I was on the road
Mm.
grinding away on my tour. Like, so now I have this great product, that could be for life. It's my personal thing. I also have the music for me. The album I did with Soul Rising, also all the albums I've done with Momentology and his catalog, and Songs of Eden, and his catalog. So I worked a collaborative system with a couple other musicians and stuff like that. And so there's the the opportunity and the obstacle, the
Mm.
the magic and the mess, whatever you want to call it.
So that's at djtazrashid.com, right?
Yeah, they can just
Yep.
exactly. They can go on there. There's people can get it. We can put it in the show notes or whatever like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I'll put it down there. I
But
know that you have the royalty free music, and then I
yeah,
think
that's
getting
it.
on your newsletter too. I know that you release a few songs. So I think for those who may have questions about why do I need that and why would that
Oh
be
yeah.
important, and I mean, it's a higher quality audio, right? That they're going to be getting rather than like playing it from like Spotify or whatever.
Yeah,
And
we
but it's also about the legalities around using
Yeah,
your music.
that's the main thing. We give high quality MP3, but we also give I also created over 100 playlists on both Spotify and Apple Music. So
Yeah.
if you are on those platforms, you got ready to go playlists. You just literally hit
Yeah.
play and you can save them on your, personal Spotify and Apple Music things. But there are people who need the files who are actually making videos for their streaming platforms and whatnot. So we do provide all the actual files for that as well. And yeah, to answer your quick question, like why do they need that? It's like it's a legal thing. Like if you're doing it and you're selling programs or anything online, when you're putting music together, you actually need what's known as a master sync license that the artist or the label gives to people. And so because I own my music, I can do that. I can provide that license to them. And then I also provide what's called a public performance license so they can take that song and use it for like a live event or whatever that they're doing. So we're actually giving two licenses all at once. It's like, if you look at what is actually involved with it, it's like, it's an incredible deal for anyone to use. Anyone that's creating content, it's a great thing. And there's libraries out there, that are royalty free, like music libraries, but most of them are for cinematic stuff for like commercials and things. What I've created is more for this like mindfulness yoga kind of like work. If so, it's more niche or niche, whatever the word is. It's cool. It feels good, and there are a lot of teachers using it in studios, so I know people are using it. It's working, so it's kind of fun.
It's great. I was using I used a service. It was called Yogi Tunes, I think is what it was called.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
another
absolutely. I know those guys.
another, but I wasn't the interface and the app wasn't exactly what I would have wanted to make it user friendly and multi-teacher license, and there was some issues with it, and some, that's maybe why people are hesitant about how do I use this other thing when I can just use Apple. Why can't I just use iTunes? I pay for that. Why can't I just use Spotify? I pay for that. What would you say to someone who says I just use this? And
Well, it's education is very important. Most people out there don't understand about proper licensing, and how it works. So there's an educational element around it. And the Yogi Tunes guys are great. I know the founder Rara Alex Harris, and they're doing good stuff over there. So I think for most people out there, it's like they're either going to learn the hard way sometimes, like they're going to learn the difficult way later when they may have to take down videos if they have like Beatles playing in the background or something like that. And so while this has been happening, a lot of fitness yoga teachers, they've just been making videos with whatever music in the background, and they may not know about it, or they may just not care, be like, whatever, just like I'll just do it, and it's a personal choice, but there's a legal matter, and I think when people know that, oh wow, like it's like creating a DVD. Remember DVDs back in the day? Like if you were thought about it, like if you were creating a 20-minute or a $20 DVD that you're going to sell, and you were going to put music in the background, you would probably think that, hey, I probably need the rights to put this music in the background. That's exactly the same thing that's happening right now when you're creating an online product that's on a membership site. You're creating a quote unquote DVD, but it lives online and it's being streamed. It's just a different platform. So it's the exact same thing. Same thing with like a live recorded Zoom class. It seems like a very simple thing, but it's content and it's being monetized. So there needs to be some sort of like, licensing involved with that music. That's the proper way.
And someone's like Spotify purchase does not cover that. If they were
Spotify purchase is just a personal,
not business.
Personal thing, and like they may have a business thing, but even for business, if you're recording it, that's a different thing.
Okay.
That's even if you have Spotify and you're using it in a yoga class, it's totally fine. But if you're recording that and making it into a piece of content or a video that you're selling separately, that's not just a live thing. That's a product. Like if I have Britney Spears in the background singing a song, that I'm just playing through a boombox, but it's being recorded too.
Is that what I hear right now? Oops.
Exactly. You did it again. You made another recording. Yeah. So, it's just education. That's it. When people know about it, oh shoot, maybe I should look into that. Like,
Well, because of COVID, we had to learn about those things, right? Because a lot of people were not teaching, were not even familiar with a webcam or using proper microphones, and
yeah,
so we had to learn what's proper etiquette, and I mean it's something that I'm guilty of too, that I had to say, okay, teach me this, how do I make this right, and how do I do this properly? And so yeah, so if people want royalty-free music that they can use on their YouTube, or they can use it on their their online classes, they just need to go to your webpage and you have a whole stack of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, there's websites, other websites out there, and I'm offering it just to help people more for the yoga, meditation. I've everything from binaural beats to like mostly instrumental stuff, and so they can find a lot of different styles of music. It all just doesn't sound the same, and in some capacities, it's good that I do have a lot of different types and genres of music, so people can hear a lot of different styles. It's not just like one sound.
Yeah, I know that through your travels you've had lots of different types of classes. You
Yes.
mentioned a couple of, the ecstatic dance and the yoga and the yin yoga and the vinyasa yoga. And I think that you probably know every celebrity yogi on the planet. I think you've probably done a class with one of them, or a festival with one of them. And that's kind of how you and I connected, was through the festival scene. Actually, something we'll talk about maybe offline, but we'll be, the Utah festival we'll be bringing back.
Great.
I'm actually quite interested in what you talked about with the headphones, because I think we have a lot of areas, and so for people who are not familiar with that, teaching a class where everyone's wearing headphones kind of works like a silent disco. But we live in an area of like national parks here, and you can't just bring a DJ and have music and do yoga in a national park. It would be highly frowned upon and shut down. Yes. It wouldn't work. So doing that with the headphones then creates an opportunity to create a party environment that doesn't have the noise pollution, if we want to call it that, even though it's not pollution, but the noise pollution. So pretty cool and that's something that we'll be looking at doing for this next upcoming one. But I wanted to shift away from the music a little bit and talk a little bit about the non-physical. Talk a little bit about where we are when we wake up in the morning, and how we kind of get started into our, we put on our role as DJ and music creator, and we have all these things before our feet even hit the ground. And I know that your practice, we talked about breath work and meditation, help facilitate that. I want to hear a little bit about walking in to momentum for your day, like how that starts, because it's sometimes hard when you work from home to find that. So I want to hear a little bit about your momentum and how you keep it.
Most people may think that like all yogis and myself are like waking up at 4 and doing like all kinds of sadhana and practices and meditation yoga. I wish like I had the time to do that, but like I'm a father, I have a family. Like I'm waking up with my daughter, and I'm usually like with her till like 11 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes even 1 o'clock in the afternoon if I take her to classes. So, like we have different roles, especially as you grow and become a family person. You're like a lot of those personal things that I would love to do. Like I'm not able to meditate in the morning. Like that's just not even an option for me. I'll wake up at like 8 o'clock with my daughter, and then I'll get to use the restroom, and then I'm just with her, either making her food or hanging out with her and things like that, until I take her to like a baby class, and I'm with her. She's only 2 years old, 2.5. And then most days, like today, my day started at 11 a.m. Okay. That means like I didn't even get to put on like the headphones or like get on a computer to do email or anything like that till 11 o'clock. Some days it's 1. So like that's been a huge adjustment since I've had a child, and my wife, she's great, and she's had to adjust like that too. Like she's right now seeing her clients on Zoom. I'm talking to you. Our baby's actually with our nanny right now, and she's taking a nap. So even with a nanny, it's like you still have tons of responsibilities for family. So if I'm meditating, and when I'm meditating or going on a walk or a run, it's during my work hours, like during, like, say 11 to like 7 or 1 till 8 at night or whatever it is. So things have shifted like that. Um, but for me, in the morning, what gives me energy is a cup of coffee. I love that. I don't frown down. Coffee is amazing. Um, I've done bulletproof coffee for many years. Now I just drink regular coffee, and I really won't have a big breakfast, or any breakfast at all. Usually, I won't even eat till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I usually keep it pretty. If I do eat something, it'll be very minimal, like some eggs. That's it.
Mm.
Some protein. Like, I won't have bread or fruit and things like that in the morning. But that gives me a lot of energy because, if I have an egg, that's like fat and protein, mixed with coffee. That's energizing, as far as things go. Um, but I'm able to like work till like 2 or 3 o'clock and then have like lunch, and I feel supercharged and ready to go.
For me, it's the
Uh,
breath work. It's the breath work that gets me going in the morning,
yeah, that's great.
and that's usually how I get supercharged. But the what you said about not checking emails, that's actually a really good thing, because like if you were to like check your emails while you're in bed, you would start your day
No,
with
yeah.
with some things that maybe are not positive, that may actually be a little bit negative, and or more things you have to add to
Well,
your to-do
even
list.
positive,
Yeah.
it's a distraction. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
like sometimes I'll take a quick peek at my email, but I won't even open them. I'll just look and see, because I work with a lot of like countries that are like London and different time zones, Israel, different places
Yeah.
where like they're ahead. So I'll sometimes will see that, like, all right, I'm going to be working with these guys today, or like I have to respond to these people like later in the day when I do get back to my desk. But even that's an energetic distraction. Like, the best is when I don't even open anything till later. Um, but there are people who sometimes need to hear from me, so like I have to kind of check in a little bit around 9 o'clock or 10, but then table it if it's not,
Hmm.
there's an emergency, which there really isn't usually in my line of work. Everything can wait, is what I've learned. So yeah, like I'm like completely like tech free till like later in the day. When I tell people like, yeah, I don't get started till like 1 o'clock, they're like, what? That's crazy. I'm like, I'm able to accomplish a lot still. You have to like
Yeah.
really figure out how to work your creative flow and juices and what works.
Yeah, we find that through our daily practices, our sadhana. We kind of find that, this is what works for us, and this is what I need to function, and this is how I
Mm-hmm.
need to connect to non-physical self. This is how I need to connect to my family. This is how I need to be creative. And our sadhana is, for those listening that may not know, but just kind of a routine in general, that like, this is what I do. These are my daily practices.
Yes.
And that those usually revolve around some form of non-physical practice, whether it be meditation or breath work, or prayer or devotion in some way, which is always a bonus for us. But I think we talked about your album, Ananda. That's the one that caught my eye in the name of his title, because of bliss, finding that
Yes.
bliss. And I think if we talk about yoga and all of its limbs, we go through all of them, which include meditation, all the way at the end. As a Western world, we're on the fourth and the third over here with
Asanas.
asana and
Yeah.
pranayama. But then
Yeah.
we go through pratyahara and dharana and dhyana, and then we get into samadhi, which is that self-realization state. So, and I wanted to jump that far ahead, actually. So I wanted to talk a little bit about self-realization, and the reason why I bring that up is, a lot of people think yoga is that Western practice,
Yeah.
but really in the sutras it's only talked about once, and whereas meditation and dharana and dhyana talked about 50 plus times.
Oh, yeah.
And then samadhi is echoed and echoed many places in the Vedas and the Upanishads and different places. And So I kind of want to just ask you,
Okay.
just in a very simple form, what is self-realization? What does that really mean as you in your incarnation now? What is self-realization to you?
Man, that's a deep subject for me. And it changes, the way I define that as I'm evolving, as an individual. For me, self-realization is having the experience right now that there is this body, but there's also this spirit that is living inside this body right now. And to be aware of that is key. And so that spirit is having this like movie experience, kind of like the movie Avatar, So all this stuff that's been built inside of me, all these programs, all the emotions, things from childhood till this point, and even past karmic stuff. That's all just part of that movie experience, and it's not really that spirit that's living inside. The spirit is just experiencing that.
Mm.
So the more I can be aware of all that, the less stress I feel, and not inside of the movie being like the actor. So self-realization for me is to just be in total awareness of what's happening, almost like um, watching it from like the director's seat, if that can make sense, like a movie. Like, imagine this is my movie. Self-realization is when I become the director and not one of the actors or actresses in the scene.
Still in charge, but
watching it.
the observer.
But the
Yeah.
observer, and that's not always easy, but because of my training and everything that I've had, thank God, I can actually tap into that director spot rather quickly, even during like really heavy moments of emergency, or like I just don't flip out anymore. I don't know what it is, but I can't flip out. Like, like it's just really interesting. Like moments where I should be super angry, or like I'm just like, I don't know. I just take a step back and take a deep breath. Again, breath. That's deep connection to self, like realization in the moments. Like, you just take that and kind of like just latch free of like that charge you may be able to have.
Well, tell me about that training. Tell me like about what you said because of your training. Tell me about that.
Well, I'm okay. So from 2009, my wife and I, we've been part of this work. I don't know what this community is doing right now, but it was like the Oneness Blessing. It was a small uh, school based out of India, but a lot of like enlightenment. It's like a small enlightenment school kind of thing, And we studied all the different, the yogas. But my wife and I actually went down to India, South India, twice to do the one time it was for 2 weeks to do like a training where we could teach people like awakening courses over the course of a weekend. So I was like, we were geeked out about this. Like we were studying enlightenment, awakening, God realization, self-realization, like hardcore, like practice. And it wasn't just reading and studying. It was like a lot of experiential based things. And most of it, the deepest stuff were revolved around breath work, that this stuff was happening. So, 2 weeks of the training, we came back, we taught these courses, and most of this training was around shedding or letting go of energetic blocks that we have around our parents, our past lovers, and our experience of how we understand God to be. Because that's really the biggest challenges most people have, whether they realize it or not. All those issues in our tissues are involved around usually our caretakers. If you don't have parents, whoever like raised you, pretty much. It's the deepest wounds are from people that are closest to us, right? So it's parents, and then our past lovers, people that we were very close with. We have a lot of wounds around that. And then a lot of people have wounds from like church, religious type of their connection of understanding of what God is or who God is. A lot of us have been raised with dogmatic like types of judgment. God will judge you for this. So we've been judging our whole lives ourselves, So to heal ourselves of these heavy kind of like psychological wounds that most of us actually have within our psyche, to be able to start shedding those, you just start becoming lighter and lighter and more free. And so the self-realization becomes like a second nature type thing once you've let go of all these like onion peel or whatever, these layers, as we talk about. So I'm very lucky that I had this kind of deep work, and it wasn't about it wasn't a religion, or it was very just straight up spiritual, and anybody could work with any background, whether you love Jesus or Allah or Muhammad, or if you're Jewish or Hindu. It doesn't matter what background. It was all about connection to something that's important to you. That's
Huh.
why I love this work. It was that you could work with whoever, but it was about relationship. What what does that relationship look like? Because our whole life is actually relationship. Everything that we are in conjunction with, whether it's an institution or a guru, deity, prophet, God, it's all that relationship that we personally have with that thing. So starting to become aware of that will start giving us a lot of freedom in our life, because we realize, oh shit, I have a lot of heaviness with this institution or this person. There's all this dark energy that I have with. So then once we become aware of it, it's like taking the flashlight and looking at a dark room and seeing what's there. We take the flashlight inward. And so we did that, and then we even went back to India, did 30 days of deep like awakening experience. It was a bhakti process, so a lot of like devotional type of awakening, which is another level where it's not just like the mind. Like there's like the Buddhist awakening, and then there's the Hindu type of awakening. Very different, actually. The Buddhist awakening is very deity free, like different kind, more of like the mind just being in vastness, like this expression. And the Hindu type of God awakening is just like being like one with the divine, and just like enamored with in the love of bhakti, it's just, and I love both of them. And I've experienced both of those things, and we were taught both of these, like God realization versus self-realization, and there's just so much cool stuff there. So it was nice to have all that, and then I kind of went on my like DJ career, with all that deep understanding and into the mindfulness scene. And I work with companies like Wanderlust and Yoga Journal, who really don't deal with any of this stuff as much in the front scene.
Right.
But it was nice because a lot of those companies I work with were bringing in new people, new yogis and meditation people who are interested in the subject, So I love that. I love working with organizations where these people are actually looking for self-realization, but they just don't know that yet. They're just walking into the yoga party, but eventually they'll end up in some sort of deep realization. But it's really cool to work with groups that are opening the doorway for that.
There's so many paths, right? There's
Absolutely.
so many paths, and I think where we get lost is when we say there's only one. When we say there's only this one path to get us there. And even in meditation alone, we kind of you express that, like with Buddhist meditation is going to be different than a Hindu, is going to be different than they're all just different paths to the same samadhi, that same self-realization. And yeah, it's just beautiful that it's there. One of them that kind of weaves in and out of some of your music is that of mantra, kirtan. And I don't know if you really I know you play the piano a lot. Do you practice kirtan at all? Do you work with the harmoniums and that kind of stuff? Or
well, interestingly, I used to 2008 to like 2013 or something like that. I was very involved with the kirtan and mantra scene in Chicago, and actually all around the country. I worked with even Bhakti Fest. I helped put together the Midwest Bhakti Fest for 3-4 years, working with the Bhakti West. If you're familiar with that festival, it's like the modern Western kirtan scene, and I loved it. Like it actually allowed me. That was actually my music background. Getting me into spiritual music was mantra. I worked with this band called Bhakti Caravan, actually in Chicago, and I kind of like, it was awesome because from the 2008 till, like I said, 2012, 13, like I was probably doing like 1 to 3 kirtan gigs a weekend. A lot of people don't know about this. And I would play with, this group. But then when I started working with Bhakti Fest, I was playing with different, because I'm a percussionist too. So I'd be playing with whoever came to town. They would just call me and be like, "Hey man, play your djembe and cajon with us." And I was like, "Sure." you know, so I got to play with like really amazing, fun artists like, you know, Govindas and Radha, Saul David Ray, Mike Cohen, um, Dave Stringer, and Arjun Baba. There's so I've worked with a lot of these guys, but this was before I got really into the production, music production. Like, you know, I was DJing on the side during these times, but when I started really getting into that, I kind of went away from the mantra world. You know, I personally think mantra is very powerful. I don't have a daily mantra practice per se. You know, sometimes I will chant Om Namah Shivaya. You know, I like the Shiva mantra, and but I just don't have a mantra practice right now. But that was part of my spiritual journey for many years. You know,
Huh.
and a lot of people don't know about that.
No, I didn't know that about you either. That's awesome.
No,
I mean, I as I search through your music, I mean, there's several that have mantra chant on there.
Yeah.
Even some of the older stuff that you had was I think maybe more saturated with that. I mean, you know, I have several that I love. You know, anything to do with Ganesh is you know, is one that I really love.
Yeah, absolutely.
It tends to be one that I go to, and you know, may all beings be, you know, free. I think that one's a really powerful one to me. But I think the one that I use the most is one that Ram Dass gifted us. You know, before his passing, another DJ was interviewing him and made an album with him. And and he said his mantra is "I am loving awareness." That's his daily practice. That's when he wants to go deep and wants to connect to himself. Is I am. Oh, he's probably one of my greatest spiritual teachers of this time, and I would say that I'm, even after his transition now, I'm maybe even closer, because the works are coming out. I'm you know, it's kind of like, isn't that what happens to a lot, and not just spiritual teachers, but musicians and, you know, writers and stuff. It's like, you know, we're in this wheel, if you will. We're living our incarnation, and we don't know if we're one step away from that self-realization or, you know, our transition to death. That the next moment could be that. But you know, we learn and we grow along the way, and I just think that it's really a beautiful thing to be closer to that spiritual teacher now than I ever was. You know, he had his Be Here Nows and had all of his books and stuff, but now I'm like almost a daily listener to podcasts and
so much good stuff. And his last book, I don't know if it was last book or not, but Be Love Now. That's I don't know if you've heard, like, read that. I listened to the audiobook. It's an incredible book, you know. And if you ever get a chance, if you're a big fan of Ram Dass, check out his lectures he gave in Naropa University on the Bhagavad Gita. Man, I mean, his stories, and this is like, I think like peak like 70s, you know, and it just, the recording is great. Just look up Ram Dass lectures, Naropa University, Colorado, you know, on the Bhagavad Gita. It's like epic. Like,
I'm gonna have to.
It's like you're there, like, oh, you know, it's like so good. Anyway, so
right here I have one. You can see this out in the corner here, but this is the newest one. I haven't actually read it yet. It's called Being Ram Dass. It just came out.
Wow. Yeah, I heard of it.
It just came out just really recently, and it's his memoirs. That was I think if I remember right, Rameshwar Das is who wrote it, and I think he said it took him 10 years to collect all this, and finally released it after his transition. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he probably would say it, but he was ready and decided when he was going to transition, and had a good life. And I guess that's kind of where I'm leading this to now is, you know, he had a good life. He you know, we tell the story of Ram Dass, and, you know, people can look up where he went from Harvard professor to, you know, to deep dives into the mind, and through our psychedelic experience, through changing that into more of a spiritual practice with his guru in northern India, which is how I relate mostly to him, because I was in northern India when I lived there. And it's just very, and then coming back to talk about his experiences in a very easy to understand, very very simplistic way. And I think that's what I like most about him is it was the way that it was just very easily understood. The concepts that seem so far away, they seem so Eastern, right? Like they just seem like that doesn't exist anymore. You know, that enlightenment thing, that self-realization thing doesn't happen. That was to,
Yeah.
you know, maybe that was Yogananda, maybe that was, you know, the Dalai Lama, but that doesn't happen with Westerners. And I would, you know, of course, disagree with it, that we can go deeper. And
Absolutely.
I think it has to do with what is our good life consist of, and what are we filling our cup with to get there. And I want to ask you, what do you need to fill your cup with to have a good life? What does that include? Not just in a householder experience or a business experience, but I'm talking about more as when you're getting to the end of your days to say, I lived a good life. What does that cup look like that you've filled it with?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a beautiful subject for us to contemplate on, I think, like regularly, because I mean, I definitely think about that. I think for me right now, you know, I'm almost 40, and I'm married, and I have a 2 year old, and for me, like having a good life feels right now like being on purpose, as far as knowing what your purpose is to experience and be, you know, as far as like work goes or whatever it is, like how am I spending my time in my life, right? And so if I can look at that person and be like, you know, I'm doing what exactly I want to do, you know, I'm on mission, that's a big check right there for a good life. Like I'm doing that. And the key thing with that is like making that into a living, like an income to support family.
Mm.
Okay. Because you can't just do a hobby and not pay the bills. You know, you got to, if it's a hobby, it needs to become a job that can pay your bills. Because that's a big part, is that if I can take that passion, purpose work, make it into my career, which is what I've personally done and working on doing, because it's not, I haven't just figured it all out, because it's a total like hustle and a half, you know, like doing what I do is not easy, because it's like there's not a lot of it out there, and you're creating the opportunity all the time. So that to me is a great feeling, that I'm able to provide for myself and my family doing what I absolutely love. I feel like I'm on track. There's no regrets there. um like if I were to die tomorrow, you know, I'm just saying, like I could look back and say, wow, like no regrets, I actually did everything that I wanted to do to this point. Traveling, music, there's no like desires that I like, human, like I think like desires are good, you know, in a sense where like a lot of times if you, okay, I'll share about this. This is actually kind of important in my opinion to talk about a good life, because one of my teachers told me how, like, you know, when we have certain desires as human beings, a lot of times like that desire will just lurk around our existence, like oh, I got to do this, I want to do this, I really want to do this. It's like you need to just go ahead and do it. Okay. Because in that process of doing it, you know, you may realize this is actually not for me. You know, I actually don't need to be doing this. I actually don't like to do this.
Mm.
Because a lot of times if we don't, and when I'm saying desires, I'm not talking about like bad desires. I'm talking about, it could be, but I'm talking more like life passion desires. Like I really want to be a musician, or I want to be a dancer, or I want to go build schools in Africa, or I want to go build schools in the south side of Chicago, whatever that is. If it's something you really want to do, go and try it, do it, but go through it so you don't have that regret when you're on your deathbed being like, I always wanted to do this and I couldn't do that, right? I didn't do it. I don't want to have those kinds of regrets. So to me, it's about being on mission, having a healthy relationship with that, providing for family, making good money so I can enjoy life, and really being kind to myself and to others. So kindness is a big part, you know, and experiencing abundance in a way where I'm not hoarding it or like holding it back, so I can really be in flow with it and not worrying that I won't have enough later. Really trusting the universe to know that like I can enjoy it right now, and it will be provided for me later. So these are like
Mm.
perspectives, and I'm sure people disagree with some of this, but I'm feeling really good about that right now in my life. And like I said, I could go tomorrow and have no regrets, being like, I could have done this, I should have done that, I shouldn't have done that. Just feels solid. And 12 years ago, when I was still in the corporate scene, I couldn't say the same thing. I
Yeah.
think the word is fulfillment. Like, when you can ask someone, like, hey, do you feel fulfilled with what you are doing right now? Like, if you have, like, an honest fulfillment, like, do you feel that? If you can answer yes, then that's a great sign. If you're like, no, then we need to look deeper and maybe make some tweaks.
So a good life is being on purpose. It is deliberately creating your life, whether that be
Yes.
abundance, success, love, relationships. And so being on purpose, deliberately creating your life, and being kind, and being of service is what I heard from you.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful, because those are the things that we hear from all kinds of spiritual teachers, right? Aldous Huxley talked about being kind, and the Dalai Lama talks about being kind, whereas Gandhi talked about being of service. And we have all these things that keep coming up. Like, it's like, if you don't hear it, it's going to go full circle and come back around, and we're going to be told, hey, live now, live right now, don't live in the past. I mean, I don't think that you go to make it your creative process to make an album and think about your corporate life. You don't you think about, how am I feeling today? How am I, what is inspiring me today? It might be that the sky is blue, and that's what's inspiring me, and that might become part of the album cover, or whatever that is, your process. But it is about being right here, right now, and deliberately creating. Abraham Hicks talks about that, and there's some other teachers, Eckhart Tolle and so forth, that talk about how this moment right now may be your only, or it could be your last, or it could be the one that leads to the next. No matter what happens, it is still the most important. I think I was listening to Dan Millman talk about, when you throw your keys up in the air, when you go to catch them, you're not thinking about the tasks that you need to do later that day. You're only thinking about catching.
Yeah.
You're only thinking about catching that at that moment. And then you go back to your mind's process. And our meditation, our breath work is what kind of slows that down and never stops spinning. When I lived in India, I was told that when we can control our breath, we can control our mind. When we can control our mind, we can control our body. And it's kind of that process, of let's be here. Then that the breath is what really brings us the calming of that whirlwind of our mind.
Yeah.
Now, our whirlwind is needed, though. Wouldn't you agree? The whirlwind is needed. That's where your memories are. That's where
absolutely. The whirlwind's going to be there. It's not going to just go away. Your mind is not going to stop.
No, it's not gonna stop. You live in Florida now, right?
Till the end of this month, and then we're trying to move here. Yeah. Anyways.
So it's Florida. Well, so you're getting out before hurricane season, which is good. That's where I was going with this. Is that I lived in Florida, and we would have these giant hurricanes, that would rip through, and anywhere from about May till about October, we were on constant alert. And I had the great privilege of being in the eye of a storm on several occasions, being able to be in the middle of that whirlwind. Very looked down upon by local authorities to be out during those times, but there's something really beautiful about when that whirlwind goes by, it tears up, the beach, the neighborhood, and then you have that moment of, it's almost an eerie, quiet, calm, the eye of the storm. I mean, you still know the storm's happening around you, but you can kind of sit for a moment in that peace, that place of peace. And I think we find that in our meditation, but I really think that I find that too, listening to some of your music, where I can slow down, be in the moment, and just hear, and just kind of be there and listening to the subtleties, the bass, the beats, and it's all very, very mindfully produced. And I think that's where you set yourself apart from others, is that mindfully produced vibration, and how our vibration is important, more than just what are the lyrics? I mean, very few of your songs have lyrics. They're mostly instrumental.
Yeah.
We're moving beyond what is being said, but what is being felt. And I think if you could talk a little bit about that feeling, because I'm maybe assuming this, but what message do you want to leave your listeners with when they listen to your music? What do you want them to maybe feel, or what do you want them to maybe even notice in your music?
Yeah, I think the feeling that I want, like it just goes back to my purpose. I want them to feel more empowered and enlivened. I want them to feel more awake, after they experience a class, say, or a DJ set or a song that they're listening to on Spotify, is where they're like, wow, like I feel more energized, or just the sense of being, this feeling good. And of course, I have some songs that are a little bit more darker, but most of my music is, I would say, music that can be enjoyed in like some sort of a practice or a playlist where people feel like good afterwards.
Hmm.
That's the intention, um, and notice wise, I'm not really an analytic type person, so I don't think of what I want. I don't want them to be like, oh, I can notice the snare drum, or like, I want them to
Hmm.
just kind of like notice an overall feel of like, again, of like an awakened experience. Like, how can that be sonically experienced, even with a song with beats and stuff like that?
Hmm. Yeah, some of my favorite are the more primal in feeling,
Yeah.
mostly because of the style yoga I teach of Budokan yoga.
Mm.
It has those primal elements, and that's really what I love. It kind of takes me. I would say that it even transforms us in the way of our human capacity. We're wearing our clothing, we're in our yoga studio, and the music itself creates environment, just like lighting. You have lighting behind you. I have tapestry from India here. We create an environment, but I think the music in many forms creates that environment. Ashtangi
Absolutely.
yogis would disagree. They would disagree that you don't need
Just
music, but
no music at all for them.
yeah,
Yep.
no music at all. But others would say that it's as a key element. So I would encourage my listeners and those who are listening to consider the idea, if they're using any music, to go to djtazrashid.com, the royalty free section. Amazing, lots of stuff. Get on your newsletter, because you randomly release some free downloads, which I
Absolutely.
love. I've used
Yeah.
them in a few videos and posted them myself, because it's great that you do those.
Thank you.
And then every single music streaming service that's out there, I think they can find you. Is and do you have merchandise stuff too on your website?
I most of my merch now I just have when I do live events. I'm not,
Okay.
because I'm not home in Chicago. Like, but if you ever see me live, like I'll probably have some cool merch and things like that available.
I was just looking at your sweatshirt and I was like, hold on,
Oh,
I was
stay
like,
gold. I know
yeah.
this is a spiritual gangster.
Oh, okay. I thought it was from your Gold Flow like
Oh
song.
yeah,
I was
totally.
like, oh yeah, that would be amazing if it was like
This is an old sweatshirt too.
probably the most comfortable out of all of them. But
they're so good. Yeah, they're all
well, so people know where to find you, and you're going on the road, so that they should just get on your mailing list so they can keep up. I
Yeah.
know, so they can keep up with where you're going to be. I would like you to come to Utah. We're going to
Oh, I'd
talk
love
about
to.
talk
Yeah.
about the Southern Utah Yoga Festival and that happening. We are, last year we had to bring it indoors and make it virtual, but this year we're looking at taking it outside. And
I can come out there and I can bring 100 headphones.
yeah,
And we can do some. I actually travel with my sound off headphones. So people that are listening, is like we were talking about it. I actually fly with 100 headphones, and I can go to a festival or wherever and do these cool experiences. Like I did this with Mammoth Yoga Festival, and I'll probably be doing that this year with them. I've even done that with some Wanderlust events where I bring the headphones to them, and it's an amazing thing. Like you said, you can be outdoors by the waterfall or wherever. All you need is a battery pack.
Yeah.
It's
Do
that
do
easy.
you offer at some of these festivals? Do you offer meditation and breath work
I
instruction
actually
also?
have I don't teach yoga, but I do have a couple cool movement and meditation experiences. So we can
Okay.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So I lead those, yes, and they're really cool, especially with the headphones, because the guided meditation ones are cool because I use my binaural beat frequencies. So it allows people to
Yeah.
go into deep theta, and we do some visioning work, empowerment work, opening up the directions, things like that. And people feel really good. It's I've been teaching that for about 4 or 5 years now. They're always packed at the festivals, and people really enjoy them. So I'm happy to offer that wherever.
Yeah, well, that's what we'll look at here by down at Zion for sure in southern
Cool.
Utah. So I know that your schedule is full the way you talk about it. It's I don't like to use the word busy ever because it seems like a negative connotation, but you have a full schedule. So to get on your schedule is probably a couple of months out, right? If they wanted you to come to a festival or
It just really depends. You'd be
yeah.
surprised because of COVID world. Like, it's not like I'm touring like I normally have
Yeah.
been since, like, say, whenever till 2019, So there's definitely, like, June's pretty busy, July's starting to get busy, but there's definitely openings. And I think a lot of communities around the US are starting to realize, hey, we can do events this summer outdoors. They're just kind of like that's setting in motion for them. And so more and more events will happen for sure. And then I think fall will be a great time for events.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good. So when is your festival? When is the Utah?
We're still in the planning if we're going to do it this fall.
Oh, okay, great.
And I think that's probably going to be the thing. Either that or we're planning on next spring. See, the summer here
Yeah,
in southern Utah is not a good place for festivals in the summertime.
got it.
It's quite hard
Yeah,
because
fall
it's
is
so
good.
hot.
Yeah,
It's just
fall is
really,
good.
really hot. So I'm talking with them about doing that. So yeah, we'll put it together and I'll be
Cool.
in contact with you. Um, Thank you for joining today. I really appreciate your time. I want to respect your time. We've gone a little bit over, but I like going deeper into the thought processes of people who I respect and enjoy your, whether it be a book or your music or whatnot. Tell us before I let you go, what's coming up for you in the way of releases or any projects that you're working on that you're interested in talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure when this podcast will be released, but May 21st, my album Peaceful Warrior is coming out. And a lot of the songs you've heard, I've released them as singles into this year, and
Yeah.
but the full album will be out. And I've been writing a lot of music since I've been down here in Florida. So I'm just going to be releasing music every week for who knows when, like for a while. There's just a lot of music to release. And what I'm looking forward to, a couple main things, is I'm possibly moving to Florida with my family in July. So for me, that's a big shift as far as selling our home in Chicago and then moving here.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of that. And the other thing is new opportunities. I'm constantly meeting people online or wherever to like book events. So I'm very open to like come out to communities. I actually personally, yes, I love big festivals and stuff, but I actually really love small, intimate events with communities that don't get this special kind of like yoga, DJ, music experiences. So I
Mm-hmm.
love visiting like small towns, small like areas of like where people are like really like wanting this. They may not be able to get to the big city or the expensive festival. So if anyone out there listening, you organize events or you want to do something cool in your city, like, reach out to me. Anything's possible. I've done super small intimate events for communities, but they absolutely loved it, and the experience was so rich
Yeah.
that they'll never forget it. So I know the power is not in the numbers, but it's in the level of offering and intention that these events are built with. So that's what I love to do, and I'm really sticking just to USA this year. Maybe Mexico, but I'm not doing much international travel, much at all.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your passion and your creativity and the things that you're creating. I'm definitely a big supporter and we hope
Thank you.
to be working with you this year again.
Yeah,
Thanks
looking
for
forward to
joining
it.
on the podcast today.
Thank you, guys.
DJTazRashid.com. You can contact him there and download there, get on the mailing list and so forth. So thank you,
Great.
sir.
Thank you,
Much
Ryan.
love. Much love.
Thank you. Much love to you. Thank you.